Now, lifeadministration.com presents the Life Administration Podcast. Here are your hosts, Leslie Loftus and Ryan Taylor.
You done?
I'm done.
You done?
Yeah.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Life Administration. Leslie was obviously very busy, but
It's typing some extra notes into my show.
because that's what we need. We need more things in our
on this one, yeah, maybe not.
Yes,
Yeah, this might be like the marriage episode as we discussed.
yes. I am Ryan Taylor, by the way.
And I am Leslie Loftus. Hello.
Hello, everyone. We have a series you alluded to a little bit earlier. So it's bigger than a two-parter.
Right.
Right?
We don't know. Although this first one could end up as a two, like any one of them could end up as a two-parter the way our marriage one did.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're kind of aware of that. But we're going to do a shortish series on life administration and parenting.
Yes. And so my ad is, if you just heard that, and I told Leslie right before we recorded, I said, all right, if I'm 22 and I hear life administration for parents, I probably go, yeah, but hold on. Don't change that dial.
Well done.
Yes. That what you're going to understand is a lot of these things that are for parents actually do apply to, I'm going to call them pre-parents.
Absolutely.
that you're pre-parenting whether you know it or you don't, right? And so we're talking about, Leslie brought up this amazing point before we started, and she actually said to me, one of the things that you always talk about is think about like your life, start living your life now, how you want it to be in 10 years from now.
Right.
And so if you are 22 and you're thinking, hey, within the next 10 years, I want to think about having kids, or maybe I will have kids.
Then give this a listen so
Yep.
you kind of have an idea of what you're aiming for.
Yeah, exactly. And so the example that I use being a music teacher, and hopefully this will resonate, that if I have a 5-year-old and I put on Mozart for him and I sit him down at the piano, I'm like, this is Mozart, let's play. And he's going to go like, no, I'm not interested in Mozart.
Right.
I'm interested in banging the keys. Well, that's fine. We're going to bang the keys, but we're going to still have Mozart on in the background, right? We're talking about immersion, right?
Right. You're still telling mom and dad to go ahead and play Mozart, or as you said, Jimi Hendrix.
Yep.
On like expose the child to music. Okay.
Yep.
Same kind of thing going on here. We want to expose you to some of these ideas so that the first time they occur to you is not when you're in the hospital with a baby in your arms.
Yeah, and
that's rough.
And by the way, if you do take these notes to heart, and maybe you're gardening, right? So you're out in the garden, you're having a little me time, and you put this on. It's like you can put this on and garden, but you will be so far ahead of where other parents will be day one. Like, I can't even imagine if I had this podcast before I had kids, right? That would be crazy good. I would be a lot smarter.
You would just know a little bit more about what to anticipate, and you will find a lot of times that puts you just way ahead of the game, because when you're trying to figure it out in the middle of it, it's much harder to figure out, and it's kind of harder to see the forest for the trees.
Yep.
Whereas if I mention it to you beforehand and you're kind of thinking of it before you even think about having children, then when this thing comes up, you're like, oh yeah, somebody told me about that.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
And it makes it a little easier to negotiate.
Yes. And also we are going to add curated courses. So this will be in like a nice little chunk on the website that you can go into when that time does come.
Right. Because we actually know that some of our listeners are in the early parent or thinking about having children phase. And this is right on point. And, you know, they're kind of wondering, were you going to get to this at some point? Because I could really use that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then my last programming note before we start is our Discord is live and it has launched. And so I am going to be talking about it in the beginning of every episode, because that is where we see the podcast going. So we've had a couple folks trickle in so far, and we definitely want want
if you
more.
Subscribe to the website, you got a notice. I'm using Substack for group emails, just so you know. Yep. So because the one that comes with our website is just kind of
not great.
It's kind of meh. So I'm using Substack. You got the link invite because it's an invited Discord. Got the link there. And then I believe it's up on the website in the top right corner. You
Also,
can find it there. So if you go to the website, you can find us.
And also, if you click the description of the podcast, I added the invite link in there. So you'll see
excellent.
Discord. You can just literally click the link as you're listening right now. Or if you're watching us on YouTube, same thing. It's in our description section. Just click the arrow to reveal the description. It is the very first link that we have up there. So go ahead and click that and you will be in the Discord server. So look forward to seeing you guys there.
Yes.
Without further ado,
let's talk parenting, life administration for parents.
Let's do it.
All right. And I want one little, especially as we're talking about toddlerdom. I suppose I should say this when the toddlerdom one, but I'll say it now too. I now have teenagers. I have 4 teenagers in the house.
Yep.
Now, luckily in the past, I took notes. I had written articles. I had given casual advice, not in a podcast. So I had tons of notes to draw on, but it's been 10 years since I was at some of these early phases. So if I don't cover something because I've just kind of forgotten or glossed over, feel free to send us a question.
Yeah.
Once again, the easiest way now to do that is to hop onto the Discord server and fire us off a question, and we'll sort that out. Yes. But okay, for this episode, I want to talk about some of the basic guidelines or the basic theories in parenting. And I don't mean theories like attachment theory or free range theory, types of parenting styles. In this one, we're really talking about the life administration of it all, which the menu planning, the scheduling. And that's one of the things. Scheduling is often a shock. Even if you've been doing some scheduling stuff in your life, the amount of repetition and routine that comes with parenting is shocking if you haven't thought of it before, or if you hadn't been really living with any sort of routine.
Yes.
Then it's just like, but I just did that.
Yeah.
And now 2 hours later, you're going to do it again. And you're going to do that again for months, years on end. Right. And if you haven't thought about it before, you've most recently been a parent and you know more people, but do you find that same thing, that sometimes it's just the shock of the same thing happens every day, that people are just like, I didn't expect it was going to be like this?
I'll do you one further.
Okay.
Is I think especially for first time parents, and I don't want to, drop into just new parenting, but it happens within hours,
Yes.
right? Like the rhythms that you have to go through for a newborn, maybe cycle every, we'll say 4 hours, right? You're kind of going through that. And then as they grow up and there's toddlers, there's different needs, but now you're maybe instead of every 4 hours, now maybe it's every 6 hours, right? And then as they grow up older, now things kind of like break off. They have certain needs, they have certain wants, right? They need structure in schoolwork. And so you have that routine that needs to take place, whether you're homeschooling or whether you're taking kids to school or
it's
you're
all
doing
routines.
Right. There's a routine. There's some kind of routine over there, but then also like you need to spark their play and their imagination. And so you need to have time set aside for just, one-on-one play.
Routines for openness.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Routines that don't have a routine. I mean, that kind of seems counterintuitive or oxymoronish.
Yeah.
But you need to schedule free time.
Yeah, you need it. And so you end up having this, and I almost don't want to use the word schedule, because schedule sort of implies like this structure that goes on for long periods of time.
We're going to talk about this extensively in the new parent stuff, because scheduling is grossly misunderstood.
Yes. Yeah. So so scheduling is not the right word. It's understanding that every day needs to have a flow, but then also being perceptive enough to say, okay, this flow is starting to change.
Right. The flow that you have with a 4-month-old is not the same flow you have with a 4-year-old.
Right.
And there were like 5 different versions of flow in the right.
Easily.
Which gets us to change is the routine.
Change is the routine.
I mean, with parenting, you've got to be ready for it in daily routines. They are going to change. You're going to have kind of a routine. Well, actually, early on, you don't have a routine at all, which is one of the weird things. it feels like a routine, but it's not. It's just because you're repeating the same thing over and over, but it's not really routine-ish.
Right.
It's kind of random.
Yeah.
And that happens for about 2 weeks or so. And then it's, 2 to 4 weeks, it kind of shifts into something else. So that changes. And then there's also the seasons of parenting. What you need to do for a 2-week-old is not the same thing you need to do for a 2-month-old or a 2-year-old. That all, and you need to be able to adapt with those parenting seasons.
Yeah.
Right. But we're going to talk about each of those as we get into them. But one of the best piece of advice, I was given by a mother mentor was just when you think, both of us.
Yeah. My stomach.
I know. Both when you think, oh, okay, we've settled into routine, especially early on with babies. As soon as you think you've settled into one, settle in for a week or so, it's going to change.
Yeah.
You need to be able to adapt.
And that was one of the things that I didn't realize as a new parent. And I think one of the key takeaways for non-parents here is being adaptable to change. That's a life skill.
Yes.
Okay. And you need to be.
It just needs to be an advanced life skill at
Right.
this stage.
Yes.
But yes, you need to be able to use that life skill in your job, in your marriage, in your relationship with your own parents. It comes up all the time.
It's always going to be changing. And I have met so many people so many times that get, I've heard this phrase, I just don't like change. And some people are even saying it right now. It's like, I don't just like change. And it's like, I understand it, but you got to get comfortable with changing. You might not like it, but you got to get comfortable with it happening. Because if you don't, it will have ramifications in your professional life. It'll have ramifications in your personal life. And then when it comes to having kids, right? You've got to be able to bend and adapt to the situation or to the season.
Again, we've discussed this, or we've used this phrase many times in life administration, freedom within the framework.
Right.
You want to have a structure to whatever it is you're doing, being it trying to, get promoted at work or, work on your marriage. You need to have kind of a structure, a goal, some boundaries. But within all of that, you need to be able to move and adapt.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Another one that hangs people up quite a bit. When we become new parents, we worry a lot about normal.
Yes.
And actually, this is not, this is not unique to parenting. It just seems to be emotionally charged to parenting. But there's tons of things when you want to know what your stats are. You want to know how you fit in with, these scores. I think test scores when you're going through college and stuff like that. There's all sorts of stuff that says, normal. This, you are normal. You're above average. We want to know those things.
Yep.
Okay. In parenting, we take all of those rules about what we know about tests and averages and everything, and we impose them on parenting. When, especially in parenting, normal is a range. It's a wide target. So I usually discuss it in terms of growth charts. One of the first things that'll happen when you have a kid is you take them to the pediatrician there's multiple checkups that you go for. You go for the newborn checkup, where the doctor usually comes to see you right after the baby's born. You go for the 2-week checkup. And these are just the typical ones. If your baby is preemie or something like that, you'll have more. The wolfhound's moving around behind us.
Mm-hmm. She's sleeping.
She's sleeping, snoring perhaps. So you have the newborn checkup, the 2-week checkup, then 2 months, then 4 months, then 6, 9, 12, 8, and then it starts to go to 6 months. And then eventually by the time you hit 3 years, it goes to every year. All right. But you have these well-child visits. On these well-child visits, in the first one, you will be given a growth chart. Okay. And it charts your child's body mass index, height, and weight. All right. And there are many factors that go into the growth chart. All right. But parents a lot of times can get hung up on where exactly their child, what the doctor is actually looking for is if you're jumping or falling off one of the growth charts. They don't usually care about one unless it happens over a sustained period of time. They're also looking for multiple things to cause the jump. Okay. So if your kid is just, because we'll talk about this in toddlerdom. Toddlers eat in spurts. Sometimes they eat a lot, and that might go on for a week, and then they won't eat for 2, and you're worried that they're going to starve, or who knows. Weight is only one of the doctors are looking for multiple 3 or 4 issues of dropping off or raising up before they're really, one of them spikes, are, Junior's working on their gross motor skills, and Junior's twin brother is working on fine motor skills. And so they seem to be, doctor's not going to care about one-offs like that.
Nope.
Now, if, Junior 2's fine motor skills are falling off and their language skills and all sorts, normal is a range. You can have abnormal individual readings, if you will, and still be just fine.
Yeah.
Right.
So one of the key learnings that I had when I had a daughter, and I actually learned this from you, was like, just relax when it comes to like the development and when she's going to do this and how that, like, it's all going to come when it's supposed to come.
Right.
And I think, again, if I'm sort of gearing this back towards maybe non-parents for just 1 second and saying that everybody has different skills and different strengths. We're all crafted vastly differently.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no reason to think that kids, when they grow up, are going to follow this perfect thing because that's what you're looking for as a parent. You have this idea that there is like this perfect model of how kids, there is no perfect model. And by the way,
it looks like the growth curve that the doctor gives you, like that. You think that it's going to hit that, and it doesn't. It has bumps along the way. As long as it averages out to that, everybody's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, it's like, it is going to average out, right? It is going. So the like, oh my gosh, because I didn't do touchy-feely colors with my 3-year-old, she's going to be behind in 9th grade. No, that's not a thing.
Yeah,
right?
I've got teenagers now. I can tell you that's just, again, what you're looking for to be concerned about is multiple fallouts.
Right.
Okay. If they're having issues with fine gross motor skills and major ones, and their height is falling off and their weight is falling off. Well, now your doctor's going through and hunting for everything.
Right.
Okay. If it's just like, oh, well, I didn't do the tactile learning the way that I didn't expose them to music or what. Oh, goodness gracious.
Yeah. Because
breathe.
Because the way that I was raised, and the way that Hallie is raised, and the way that my grandfather was raised, and the way that my dad was raised, those all look exactly the same.
Oh, 30 seconds.
No, they don't.
Yeah, no, 30-second commercial break. Yeah. There's been some great studies on this. There's one from the UK. I'll see if I can find it because it's been a while now. But it's a map. Mm-hmm. It's a map of a town where somebody, basically did the range of, so our grandfather's range of where grandpa was allowed to travel when he was 10 years old. And it's like 10 miles. Right. 10-mile radius, and there's stories about being, running into the bear while you were fishing in the pond and all, and throwing the fish to the bear so that you could get away, stuff like that. Then dad's range, our parents' range was, it was 2 miles or so, it shrunk a bit. Ours was the neighborhood, and now our kids, it's like the driveway.
Right.
Right. I mean, just the range of what, and yet. And yet, our grandparents turned out relatively normal. I mean, now they're older. And so, oh, by the way, let's tease that one because we're getting ready to do, after we're done with this series, we're also going to do a series on sandwich generation. If you don't know the term sandwich generation, it's for those people, sandwich generation shifts, but it's basically looking at the adults that are in between having to care for their parents and having to care for their young children. And let's tell you, there's a whole lot of life administration that comes in, again, scheduling time, also, yes.
And there is a lot of emotional administration that goes into that. That's why that's a tease.
Yes, exactly. So we just kind of hit it sideways there, going through that. Okay, so we've got normal as range. We've got change is the routine. And we touched on this one a bit, but we're going to go ahead and expound on it. Children come as they come.
Yep.
They already come with personalities, with programming, and as parents, you can fiddle with the edges, as I like
tweak it.
You tweak it.
Mm-hmm.
I like to say like trees. Okay, so some seeds are going to grow up and be an oak tree. Some are going to be a rose bush. And then there's ones in the middle that, are going to be crepe myrtles. I don't know if you know crepe myrtles. They tend to be, they're a large bush that most people train into being trees by trimming off the lower branches and stuff like that. Okay. You can shape the rose bush, but it's always going to be a rose bush. You can shape the crepe myrtle. That one's a little bit more, you can actually turn a bush into looking like a tree, but it's never going to be an oak tree. The oak tree is always going to be an oak tree. It's never going to be a shrub. We have this idea that children are a complete blank slate and we can, write onto the. No. They come with pre-programming, and so you can teach, for instance, if you have a child that is shy, okay, you can teach that child how to interact in large groups and be comfortable with large groups. Okay. If you have a gregarious child, you can teach that child not to walk up to every single stranger as if they're their big brother, right? Yeah. You're not going to unteach a child being shy, and you're not going to unteach a gregarious child being gregarious.
Yeah.
Right.
And to me, like, again, if I'm older and I hear that, to me, the translation is you lean into your strengths, right? So as a parent, it's harder to overcome some of those, I don't want to say deficiencies, but those areas that you wished, right? I wish he wasn't so shy, right? I wish he wasn't so shy, right? You can do some things to overcome that. Now, chances are, and there are examples in the other way, right? Because there is no perfect track, but chances are that, maybe they won't be in their high school drama play, taking the lead part or something like that.
And that's fun.
And that's okay. And that's okay, because actually what they're really good at is they actually love drama, but they love set design, right? Or something like that. And they're very artistic that way.
Right.
So you lean into that. If you're older and you're deficient in an area, you don't try to cover that area up. You lean into your strengths, right? Maybe it's public speaking. Maybe you're not a good writer, right? That's my deal, is that I can't write worth beans, but I can talk. Okay. I can talk. You can put notes up in front as them, right? So that's a strength that I lean into. And so if you're in your 20s, that's the key phrase. Celebrate your strength. Don't cover your weakness.
Right. And also sometimes you need to learn to adapt your weakness so it's a little bit stronger. Maybe it's not such a weak, but that's the thing. You're playing on the edges. You're honing the edges. You're not trying to turn an oak tree into a rose bush or vice versa. Makes no sense. And the oak tree and the rose bush are both beautiful in their own ways. When raising children, you got to remember that. They come as they come, and you don't want to push too hard one way or another, because nobody's going to like the results.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I get this picture just sort of dropped into my mind of like parent or older person. They're like riding the fence. And it's like, well, I'm riding the fence. I got 1 foot over here and 1 foot over there. But the only thing that's really happening when you're riding the fence is your bum's getting sore.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, you're not doing any of the things really well. So just go to your side and be there and be great at it and celebrate it, because you're going to get success in that area, whether that's parenting and celebrating your child's growth or you as an adult. Cool.
All right. Raising kids is a process, a very, very long process. And one of the biggest parts to this process, or the thing that I see tripping up young parents in particular, is kids won't do things that they've never been exposed to. So, for instance, let's take chores. You cannot declare at, okay, the child is 6 years old or the child is 10 years old. They should be old enough to do chores now. So all of a sudden say, okay, you're going to do chores now. Wow, you're in for a world of resistance and bad sweeping and you have to look through. Okay, the best, by far the best. I know I'm going to say this a few times, one of the best, but this is actually the best one. Raise your children with an eye to what they're like at 35.
Right.
Not 5, not the preschool that they're going to get into, not, this program, not the music, not the things that you expect them to be, not the 18-year-old, not the teenager. what are they going to be like as you want a happy, productive citizen at who's, self-sufficient, all of this, self-confident, all of those things at 35.
Right.
That's what you're aiming for. That's the long process. So you have to start teaching. Okay, so let's talk food when you're introducing food to your child. You can't just give, okay, well, they have no teeth. They have no teeth. They have no teeth. So it's only soft food, only soft food, only soft food. And then sometime when they're, 2, when they have molars, go, oh, here's beef jerky.
Of all the foods,
he likes beef jerky.
I mean, I do love beef jerky, and I was just hilarious that you said that. I was like, yeah, here you go, 2-year-old. Have some Jack Link's teriyaki jerky, baby. Okay, sorry.
No, but chewing is a skill. Like they have to learn how to chew.
Absolutely.
So which is why, once they've gotten off of or done rice, so they do the total liquid diet, then you get into rice and mushy things. And then you start with bananas and avocados.
Yes.
Because they mush quickly, little pieces of ground beef, one, because they can't grind until they have molars. So there's actually a physical component in this. And 2, they've got to learn how to, I got to push it back. And you will find when you start a child on solid foods, learning how to swallow solids, learning how to chew solids, they have to take some time to learn it.
Yeah.
And here, I'm terrible. Especially if you have young, every once in a while, they choke on it.
Yeah, they do.
They do. They do. And it's terrifying, especially the first time it happens.
Mm-hmm.
When it's a little tiny one, it's terrifying.
It'll be all right.
But it's a process.
Yep.
It's a process. And you don't want to move that process too fast because you want, you don't want it to move beyond their skill set, but recognize that as they're learning things, they're not going to do it as well.
Yeah.
Chores, same thing. You can't expect the 10-year-old to suddenly, okay, I've never done chores before, but now you want me to do chores. And not only am I going to do them, I'm going to do them when you ask, and I'm going to do them well. First of all, even if you follow the process that I'm talking about here, they won't do them when you ask, and they won't do them well the first couple of times. But second, you start early when they're mobile, 18 months or so, and you limit their, we're going to talk about this a lot in the toddlerdom stuff. You limit, okay, just pick up the blocks over there and put them in the basket.
Yep.
Give them one chore. You slowly expand until, you can hand a 3-year-old a small little broom and say, help mommy or help daddy sweep the kitchen. Right. And they're going to do a bad job of it the first 20 times they do it. Here's another thing that, and actually we're going to do an episode on delegation. This goes for the delegation stuff as well. It just really comes home with kids. It is and I think we've talked about it in other episodes too. It is a mistake to think, I can just do it faster myself. I can do it faster and better myself. Yes, you can. You know what? Then in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, you're going to be the only one doing it.
Yep.
And then you're going to be mad at everybody else because nobody helps you out doing any of whatever. And by the way, this is almost always said about life administration stuff from, writing letters, returning phone calls, cooking dinner, cleaning the living room, whatever. It's almost always a life administration task. If you don't teach others how to do it, if you don't delegate, if you don't live through and endure the times that, yes, it takes them 3 or 4 times to do a job 50% as well as you could have done in 5 minutes. So you got it. I mean,
it's investment.
Any time you were delegating at the office, at home, anytime you're delegating, this is true. If you're teaching somebody else how to do the job that you do, you need to give them learning curve time.
Yeah. So I have 2 things that I want to say here and this is practical application for me as, we're really in that mode right now of cleaning up after ourselves and all that sort of stuff.
She's 4.
Hallie's 4.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So it all starts with me. And what I mean by that is when I do chores, quote unquote chores,
mm-hmm.
what's my mindset like? If I'm grumpy that I'm doing the chores and I got to go do this, right? I'm going to go empty the dishwasher. And I'm just frowning and just, I'm just trying to get through it as fast as I can. And I'm not beaming with light. Well, when I ask my child to do the dishwasher or say, hey, come learn it with me, do you think she wants to come learn how to do that dishwasher with me?
You've heard this from elders. I know children pay attention to everything. And even when you don't think that they understand, they understand. This is going to sound insulting, but I don't mean it at all, because I absolutely adore dogs, and dogs are totally attuned to us. They read all of those little tiny bits of body language, those bits of, even if we think we're trying to hide our frustration, not from a toddler and not from the dog.
Nope.
Both of them know.
Yeah. They know. They know.
They know.
So you can't expect them to do anything that you want them to do with a sour puss on your face.
Right.
So the flip side of that example is when it's time to pick up the blocks and I go, Alexa, set a timer for 30 seconds. Okay, it's a block put away race, right?
1, 2, 3, go.
And then and we're smiling, we're laughing, go, right? Now she wants to put the blocks away.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so understand that your mindset and your attitude when you're teaching the child to do the thing, yes, that is very important. But even in the times where, hey, today I don't have the time to really invest, I got to get these dishes done in 15 minutes or whatever, you better be doing it with a smile on your face and a song in your heart, which then goes to my young professionals, my pre-parenters. It's the same thing. If you're in your career or you're with a group of people, you have to have this mindset of,
and you've been tagged to write that memo that, do I really have to?
Yep. Or I'm going to go delegate a task because ultimately I just don't want to do the task.
Right.
Right. And like, that's okay. I understand that. But when you're teaching it, you better teach it like you are transferring the biggest amount of passion into this project that there ever was. Because for that person that's taking that job on, that's a big deal for them.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big deal. Maybe they're underneath you or they're learning or they aspire to be something more. And they're getting this new little level of responsibility. And if I go to work every single day and I look at my boss and my boss is miserable all the time, then why would I want to be promoted?
Dude, I'm looking for another job.
I'm looking for another job.
Right.
Exactly. So again,
I'm using this one to pay the bills, and then I'll be going looking for a happier workplace.
Yeah. Attitude determines altitude. So you have you got to make sure that you're wrapped up into having the right mindset. I'm a big mindset person, and it is never more important than framing up delegation and training in a way that is happy and joyful.
Mm-hmm.
That was a rant. I had that one inside for a while.
You've had that one inside for a while, but you're going through it right now.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
I mean, and just out of curiosity, at the age of 4, have y'all started expanding into like double chores of like, or have you gotten to the zones yet of you're responsible for your room?
Yeah.
Okay,
so we have Hallie's responsible. So we have 2 play zones, we'll say, right? So we have her room upstairs, and then we have an area downstairs with like her blocks and her doll. And right. So she's responsible.
Which we discussed from the whole household management thing about setting zones. They went back and they set zones.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So that it's not an entire house overrun with children's stuff.
And again, those zones, they flow depending on what's happening in our house, right? But Hallie, she understands. But now it's like to the point where like we made enough games about making sure that you put your clothes in the hamper, right? So like when you take your clothes off, exactly. Shoot. How far can you, right? And then when you miss, you got to run up and you got to dunk it, right? So like there's steps and there's processes, right? It's about making things enjoyable. So yeah, now whenever I do the dish, she just wants to help with everything, which is again, you're like, oh, I could just get this done so quickly.
You could do it in 5 minutes, and with a 4-year-old helping you, it might take 20 minutes.
But for the past 2 years, every single day, I've had to pick up her clothes from somewhere. Socks, undies, shirts, whatever, all over the house. And it took a while to play the basketball game and the dunking game. But now I haven't picked up clothes in 6 months. And that's turned into that whole area she feels control over. Yep. So now she wants to be like, well, I want to dress myself. So now we have her outfits laid out in a little cubicle. You would love this. In a cubicle. Every single day, her outfit is picked out for the week, right? Awesome. Depending on what we're going to do. So now she goes in there. She okay, I know what day of the week it is. Today's ballet. She's got all of her stuff in there. Takes it out. Puts on her clothes for like pre-ballet.
And you don't have to be involved in any of that.
None of it. All we do is check. to make sure that we have what we need and we're good. Sometimes she misses the mark. We forget the water bottle or something like that. But it took a while.
Well, and here I'm going to silver line this since we're kind of being heavy on all sorts of routine, and then this is hard. And okay, here's the thing, because you just hit on it too. Especially, I've noticed it most when I was teaching kids how to do chores. Every time I would add on a new chore or what I usually did was when they were tiny, it would be one thing at a time. And then you add on two things at a time, or a 2-step chore. And then eventually you get to the point where they have like zones of places, so this one does the trash. This one does everybody does their bedrooms, but then you can add on things like you're responsible for the trash. You're responsible for the after dinner dishes. You're responsible for the setting of the table. Okay. Zones. Every time I added on one of those things, actually really just the first 2 or 3 times I added it on, now that I think about it, and that's going to reinforce what I'm about to say. Gosh, it seemed like, oh my gosh, I'm having to remind them, I'm having to go behind them. I'm having to call them back and no, you didn't do this right. Do it again. By the way, that's a very important teaching part. Call them back. No, don't fix it for them.
Yeah.
Have them do the correction. Right. Pain in the butt. Absolute pain in the butt. It seemed like there would be months where I'm just like, oh my gosh, they're never going to get this. They're never going to get this. I'm going to lose all of my hair. And then when they're, I'm having to remind them to do it, follow them behind. And then all of a sudden, like 6 months goes by and you look back and you're like, I haven't had to remind or edit that chore. And I don't know exactly how it happened, but suddenly it just fades away. And maybe if I actually tracked it, like, like a diet
you could see
diary
like the
or
day
something.
that it
right.
happened.
I would be able to see, all of a sudden I went from having to say this all the time to having to say it every other day, and then once a week and once a month. There's probably a pattern to it. I've never found it yet because it just, all of a sudden it just kind of fades away until a few months later, you're like, that one's locked in.
Yep.
Oh my goodness. That one's locked in.
Yep.
Right. And then you can add on the next thing.
Exactly.
So, but it does, the habits get established.
Yeah.
But there are times early on when you're trying to establish them when you really think this is never going to work. Play through.
Yep. Play through. Keep on keeping on.
Keep on
Because
keeping
it's
on.
going to happen. It's going to happen. And be consistent too, right? You can't say, all right, do the dishes. We'll say, right, do the dishes, and they do it one time and it doesn't really go well and you get frustrated. And
So do the laundry instead.
Right. No, it's just stick to your one thing, keep it going, and that's the best way. Awesome. That was good.
Okay. This is not exactly birth order. It sounds kind of birth order-ish, but it's not. But first kids set a lot of pace in your household. First of all, they kind of set the pace and the tone for what you expect. Okay. So even if you didn't figure out that they come with programming early on, by the time they're, toddlerdom or something, they tend to let you know, let you know what their programming is. So when second, third, fourth kids come around, you kind of put them in, it's easier to kind of put them in the same category of, you forget that your first child might have been a good sleeper or a bad sleeper, whatever it was. But you're kind of expecting your second child to do the same thing.
Yes.
Okay.
You have a filter going into it. First child filter.
I like that. The first child filter. Yes. The first child sets a filter for mom and dad. Okay. The first child also has a milestone effect. Okay. So let's go to the kitchen toddlerdom. And toddler wants to get the cookies on the shelf or on the counter. Okay, the first child has to figure out that the cookies are up there, that the cabinets are somewhat scalable, especially if they move the chair over. Like, it might take the first child weeks to put together all of the steps they need to do to get the cookies out of the cookie jar on the counter. Okay, the second child watches the first child do it when they're little.
Right.
Like, like there's the learning curve for this. So, our two oldest are 22 months apart. And I remember my husband, we'd put them to bed. Peyton, our daughter, was the second one, was still in her crib. And Patrick was 3. Anyway, Peyton's about 10 months old. Okay. And she's already started walking and stuff like that. Anyway, I guess maybe she's a little older than 10 months old. Anyway, Patrick had figured out crawling out of his crib around 2 years old. Peyton was significantly younger than that. Okay, maybe we'll call it 14 months, but she's already walking solidly. And of course, we have the baby monitor in their room, and Jim and I have put them to bed, and we're doing our normal. Actually, we were watching Alias at the time. This is the early 2000s.
Nice.
So crack television is Alias, and with all the cliffhangers at the end of it. And we're just we're listening on the monitor as Patrick is explaining. No, Paya, put your foot up here. And there was part of us that's just like, this is so adorable. This is so cute. Brother, sister bonding. And then we hear the thud. And it was a fine that, she did fall out. It was a low bed and stuff like so. No hurting on the thud. We heard the thud, and then we hear boom, 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 boom. As she's running down the hall, comes bursting in to the living room, completely proud of herself. Mommy, Daddy, look what I did. Yeah. We didn't know whether to laugh.
Yeah, right. Like,
because this is a good 10 months before her brother did it, right? And she's shorter. I mean, but he taught her.
Yeah. Super cute.
Ridiculously cute. But that means that you have a much younger toddler that knows how to escape their bed in the middle of the night. That sucks.
Yeah. But that's a great example of a milestone effect. Like that is such a good example.
Another one that commonly comes up, and I've seen it cut both ways, second child's language acquisition. Because the second child might want to acquire language faster so that they can communicate with their sibling, or the second child might have a first child sibling that is willing to do all the talking. And the second child's like, dude, this is, again, children come with their programming. Right. This is a complete personality point. Some children are more like, no, thank you. I want to do the talking myself. And some children are more, cool, I got my older brother or my older sister to do it for me. Excellent. So that can result in accelerated talking or delayed talking.
Yes.
That has nothing to do with it's nothing to even worry about it or anything. It's the personalities of your two kids that are having an effect on each other and you also might find that they kind of, especially if they're really close together, they might develop a little bit of their own vocabulary and stuff like that mom and dad don't know anything about it. So again, on that one, we can go back up to the milestone point, or not milestone point of the normal is arranged thing. Okay. If your doctor wants to dig into that a little bit, the doctor might dig into, are the children communicating with each other? Because the worrisome thing is a child that's not trying to communicate. It's less worrisome of a child that's trying to communicate, just doing it in a not exactly
right
language words that parents can understand sort of way, right? That's less worrisome. They still might watch that and monitor that just to see, but especially when you're talking about a second child, it might be because they're doing whatever they're doing, reacting to the first child.
Yes.
Which also depends on the first child's personality. Because what if your first child is not much of a talker or a communicator? You might find that the second child accelerates so that they can be the one doing the talk.
You can't predict it.
You can't predict it. But when you see it.
Yes.
But when you see it, you should be able to, okay, it's not totally worrisome. And oh my gosh, it's kind of cute.
Yeah.
Right? Except for the whole 14-month-old climbing out of her crib in the middle of the night.
Right. Because parents, especially of their first child, they just worry so much.
Yes.
So much. And, my favorite quote is worrying is like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it doesn't get you very far, and again, for my pre-parents, same advice. Don't worry about next week. Have your plan, but don't be worrying about it, because the things that are going to hit you and knock you sideways are things that you're never going to expect. So worrying is not worth it. It just
old quote attributed to Calvin Coolidge, President Calvin Coolidge, right? From if 12 bowling balls are rolling towards you, wait, 10 will go in the gutter before they get to you, and then you have the time to deal with the 2 that are remaining.
That's
I
great.
mean, there's a lot of that. You can create a lot of extra problems trying to get all of the 10 bowling balls.
Yep.
When really you just needed to worry about 2.
Yep. Parents will create their own narrative about their kids and what they're good at and what they're bad at, and all sorts of craziness depending on what they've seen on the internet or maybe on a TV show or something like that.
Or what other parents are telling them their kids are doing.
Right. Right. Stay away from that. And pre-parents, stay away from your own narrative, right? You get sucked in.
Don't believe your own press.
Yeah. Don't believe your own press, man, because you will convince yourself of things that don't even exist. My favorite, like just a quick 30-second example is when somebody meets someone new for the first time, right? And it's like, I think we're going to be in a relationship. And then they stop and they recount that first date. And then he opened the door for me. And then he did this and he did this. And I was feeling right. Da, 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 da. And it's just, they just stew in it. And it becomes like, it takes on a life of its own. And now all of a sudden, this was the best first date that there ever was. And I am going to marry this individual. And then the guy across the table is like, yeah, it's kind of a bust. I just was nice and polite. You know what I mean? But
there's a Dave Barry column about this. It's called Elaine and Dave. John and Elaine.
Sure.
I can't. Anyway, look up Dave Barry, Elaine. It's Elaine and something. Hysterical. But yes, on exactly how you can have completely divergent views of the same conversation.
Right.
This one's a conversation in a car.
So
right?
it's a whole thing. You just don't. Yeah,
and it's really funny.
Don't believe your own narrative because it is filtered by your past experiences and is not a true representation of what actually is going on.
Okay. One more for the first child filter is rules and seals.
Yes.
We talked about this a bit in the episode on kids and tech. Mm-hmm. Okay. Whatever rules you set, it's easier to set rules for your first child. So let's talk about the tech one. Mm-hmm. Okay. My kids are not going to watch television until they're 4. Easy peasy to do with the first. Well, I mean, that's actually kind of a bit of a pain, but you can do it with the first child because there's only one child. And you can say,
but you won't want to.
But you can easily declare with the first child, I'm not going to let them watch TV until they're 4.
Yep.
Okay. Now you had children like I did, say, until yours are about 2 years apart. When the 4-year-old starts watching television, 2-year-old is 2.
Yep.
I mean, and there's really no way to, I mean, even if you're just doing it in nap time, trust me, the system breaks down. So first kids just have a different, they have a different relationship with the rules, and there's more that you can do to control their behavior that you can't do later on, or you can't do effectively later on. And by the way, once you get into north of 3 kids, good luck. You'll spend all your time trying to do this. Same thing with, seals like, again, going to the tech thing, because that's where I usually think about this stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to give my kid a phone until 8th grade.
Right.
Once again, much easier to do with the first child. Harder to do with the second, because the first child already has, I mean, and this is kind of dependent on how close you have kids together. If you have them, 8 years apart, well, then actually you have 2 kind of quasi first children, really. Right. If you have them 2 years apart, that's different.
There's going to be a grouping.
Right.
Of the 2,
and then a side story. So, I had a 3-year-old, a 1-year-old, and I was pregnant with twins, and we were back here in Houston, and we had 3 lovely, we had some lovely neighbors that had 3 daughters, and they were ages 16 to 11. And so the 11-year-old used to come over and help me out. And, like I was at the house, but so I could, get the dishes done without having toddlers necessarily interfere, go to the bath, or I could just sit down and read a book while she played with the kids and stuff like that.
You could breathe.
I could breathe.
Yep.
I could breathe, which was kind of, I mean, I did mention pregnant with twins. So breathing was,
it was a thing.
Right, it was complicated. Right. Because they were crowding out my lungs. It was, anyhow, she asked me one day, she wanted to know how twins got in there. So I called her mom and I was like, look, I'm happy to talk to her, but of course I want to talk with you before she's like, she has a 16-year-old sister and a 14-year-old sister. Please tell her anything, because I'd rather she hear it from you and then this is the bit she told me that I have used because I have now 17 to 14-year-olds. What the oldest one knows, you have to assume the youngest one does too. Absolutely.
That's good.
It has come true so many times. So she's like, yes, please give her proper information on,
Yes.
she already knows the basics, but the chances that she's gone and asked her, 14-year-old sister this are decent and, gotten a not so great answer. She's like, I'd rather hear it from you. And if she's asking you, go for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, your youngest child will know the stuff that your oldest child knows.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And hey, pre-parents out there, if you're at work or you're with your friends, and like, I hope that you know this by now, but if you don't and it hasn't burned you, like, hopefully you can just do this right now. But if you have a conversation and it starts with, hey, between you and me, such and such, blah, 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 I promise you that such and such is going to find out about that conversation somehow. It might not be the person that you told,
Right.
but I like, again, there's this idea that this knowledge is going to travel, right?
Mm-hmm. And it might not be tomorrow that this happens. It
Right.
could be 10 years from now. I've seen that happen
Yep.
before.
And oh, by the way, the passing of that knowledge, I can guarantee you will get skewed and
It's the
not
game of
find,
telephone.
Right? It will not
Because
find
it might be the person that was sitting next to you in the booth behind you that you didn't see behind the plant and actually
Yep.
knows so-and-so. Well, I heard so-and-so talking. I mean,
Right.
well, come on. I mean, and the young kids, we don't have to tell them too much about this because they see this unfold on social media all
Yeah.
the time. Right.
So I just, nothing good is ever going to come out of that conversation where you say, hey, just so you know, or this is between me and you. It's not going to end well. There's
Mm-hmm.
going to be repercussions somewhere down the line.
Ooh, we can segue into the Wall Street Journal rule, which this is by the way, just a rule for life. If you wouldn't want to read about it on the front page of the front Wall Street Journal that you did this, don't
do it.
Those kind of conversations are sort of the same thing. If if you would be mortified to hear that, Susie Q over there heard about your conversation when you said, oh, just between us.
Yeah. Don't do it.
Right.
Don't
Not
do it.
that you don't ever need to seek somebody's advice. You
Right.
don't, because I mean, sometimes you do need to have those secret conversations.
Yes. But
you need to remember, even when you're having the secret conversations, don't throw out all the insults and do away with diplomacy and everything. So even if they do hear about it, it's not.
Yeah.
Oh, well, she hates me or
Yeah.
what? Okay. Anyway,
Exactly.
we're slightly off of this topic, but that's an excellent point.
Yeah. Just
Mhm.
I'm looking out for my pre-parents out there. This is how this applies to your life right now. And then I think we have one last thing to talk about.
Yep, because I hit the other one up there.
Yep.
All right, everybody. This is just one that comes up a lot in.
I'm just gonna lean back if you're watching YouTube.
Yeah. Fathers matter. Okay.
Fathers matter.
Yes. There is a lot of pushing aside of dads that goes on, either by media or for various reasons. We have this idea that women are the more competent parent. And sometimes it's society imposed because, oh, they're women. And so they're supposed to be the more competent parent. And sometimes it comes from the actual women who think, no, I'm the more competent parent.
Right.
I know. And back to what we were just talking about a few minutes ago of, chores and delegation. And if you never let dad participate, if in the day-to-day and in the life administration of it all, well, then, yeah, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because 5 years down the line, you're like, he never helps out. He never does this. And then it never helps out because he doesn't know how.
Right.
Okay. And we kind of forget there was a learning curve for us as well. But we power through the learning curve and we know how to do this. But then we power through the learning curve so much that we say, it's just easier for me to do it.
Yep.
It's just easier for me to do it. And what we end up doing is isolating dad from all of this family life administration rhythm, because here's the thing about the life administration and the rhythms and everything that we're going to talk about. There are the things that your relationships are built around. Okay. We come together and we have a dinner at the table. Where do you think the relationships get built? While you're sharing a meal, while you're sharing cooking that meal, while you're sharing the cleanup of that meal, while you're like all of this stuff, all of this routine that we're talking about in family life is actually where the relationship grows in the day to day. And so if we have put ourselves in the position where we're the only parent that does that, well, one, we're going to be exhausted.
Yes.
Completely and utterly exhausted. Two, we risk alienating our kids from their dad. And that's it's too easy to happen. It is a very, very common thing in modern life, which makes it so completely ironic given the strives and the advances of the women's movement and in feminism in general. It's kind of like, oh my gosh, let's shoot ourselves in the foot. But yeah, we need to let both parents parent.
So let me say this. You said something in one of our earlier podcasts that, and I don't remember exactly which one it was, but it's this idea of sort of the life of the child, where in the beginning, especially, it's mom and baby, and like there's this dependency on mom and baby.
Yep.
And then as you get to really, the toddler age and a little bit older, you're kind of like doing equal roles at that point.
Right. You don't realize you're transitioning, but
you are, right? You're changing one of those seasons, right? And then as they get older, and it's not that mom is less important, because that's not the thing. It's just that dad now matters even more.
Yes.
When kids are older.
Yes. And I'm in the teenager phase right now.
Right.
It is not a complete reversal
no, not at
of
all.
The intensity that, the kids, when I had just given birth to them and I was breastfeeding them and, full on mom, mom's everything. It's not that complete reversal, but let me tell you, they seek, lean on, want, because here there's also part of their development is that they need to be able to be independent. They need to do some separating from mom in particular.
Yes.
Right. So especially with teenage girls, I got a lot of that going on now. And so we're really, as parents, as the parenting team, we're having to lean on them and the dad relationship, because right now there's not much I can do.
Yeah. So let me wrap this up, because we're
right there. Time.
Okay. So make sure that in the beginning that dads are included, because it makes that transition a lot easier later on down the line.
Yep.
And it's just an easier parenting thing for both people. They're going to be able to both parent better because they do it together.
Right.
Secondly, and you got to get this, your kids will leave you. Your kids will leave.
Mm-hmm.
And dads, you need to make sure mom's tired. She does a lot. Okay. And dads, we need to be the champions of continuing to foster our relationship with our spouse, because it's a lot of work to keep it all going.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would challenge the dads out there to say, like, no, I want to make sure that my wife knows that I appreciate her, that I still find her attractive, that I still take time out of my day to talk to her about her passions and not just about the kids, because one day those kids are going to be gone. And when they're gone, it could be awkward.
Mm-hmm.
So don't.
And by the way, I mean, I'm totally with him on champion that. Same thing goes for wives.
Yep.
Because yes, one day they will leave you. And so I have 4 kids spaced 5 years apart. So it's going to be 25 years that we basically had kids in the household when we become empty nesters. That's a really long time, and it's very easy for people to grow up. I mean, and how often do you hear the cliched story about, well, after the kids left, they just realized they didn't have anything in common anymore.
Yep. Okay, we're going to wrap it up. Guys.
Yeah. Sorry, we got to go fast because we're hitting our time limit.
We'll talk to you all very soon. Follow the link in the Discord for the description Do all the positive things. We love you. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Told you we'd bust this one.